The recent round of violence between Hamas and Israel in the Gaza Strip has sparked protests on both sides worldwide. Yet some have gone further, as across Europe the conflict is being used as an excuse to launch a broader backlash against Jews, as threats, hate speech and even violent attacks occur in several countries. So are the anti-Israel protests an excuse for anti-Semitism? Joining us for analysis is Ben Cohen, author of Some of My Best Friends, A Journey Through 21st Century Anti-Semitism, and in Los Angeles, Rabbi Marvin Hier, founder of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance. I welcome you both.
Pleasure to be here.
Ben, I'm going to start with you.
Pleasure.
I mean, rational people know that Hamas is a terror organization and not good people. So who are these people? Is this a pro-Palestinian movement? Is this a pro-Hamas movement? Is this an anti-Israel movement? Is this an anti-Jewish movement?
I think it's a combination of those things. I think the thing that they are least concerned with is the welfare of the Palestinian people. This is very much an ideologically driven movement. It brings together strange bedfellows, Islamists, people from the far left, people from the far right. I think the most worrying aspect of it is that this discourse is spilling over into mainstream outlets in academia and in the media. And I think the core point that this movement emphasizes is that Israel, as the Jewish state, is a state that is forged in original sin. It's the only state in the world today whose existence and whose right to exist is regularly questioned.
But why is that, Ben?
I think there are a number of reasons for that, and I think anti-Semitism is a core reason. You know, anti-Semitism is often called the longest hatred, and it's called that for a reason. It's been with us as a phenomenon in one shape or form for around 2,000 years. I think there was an expectation that after the Nazi Holocaust that anti-Semitism would die out. In fact, the creation of Israel has given an opportunity for anti-Semites to reinvent, to rebrand their hatred, and to target Jewish communities through the Jewish state.
Right, and Rabbi, I'm going to move to you next. I mean, you spend your time educating people about the Holocaust. Is this something worrying to you?
Oh, absolutely. When you look at what's happening now, the chief rabbi of Holland, his home was broken in 5 times. The director of international relations for the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Paris, his tires were slashed. And last week, at a so-called peaceful Palestinian demonstration, his car windows were shattered. And in Berlin, you have one of the main imams for the Islamists there. He preached a sermon in where he said, "Oh God, kill every last Jew." And then he reminded his listeners that the Jews are responsible for all the plagues and all the wars in the history of mankind. Now that is pure, that's exactly what the Nazis said 75 years ago.
Now, Rabbi, I know you remember a statement that was made before the State of Israel was actually founded, that first they come after the Saturday people and then they go for the Sunday people. What is this? What's the bigger message here to the global community?
Well, to the global community, just read the newspapers, watch television, and you'll see there's a double standard in the world. During World War II, in the softening up of the beaches of Normandy, in the first 2 weeks of the campaign, the greatest campaign for liberation of Western civilization, 39,000 French civilians were killed, men, women, and children. In 9 years of war against Hamas, 9 years, the fatalities on the Palestinian side in Gaza is over 3,000. But it dominates all the headlines all over the world. And when you compare it to the greatest generation, so why is that? And my answer would be, there's a double standard. The world doesn't want to remember that Hamas, in 2005, they had a golden opportunity when Israel unilaterally withdrew. And now the whole world wants to know why the borders are closed. The borders are closed because in 2005, if Hamas would have signaled, we're interested in development of our beachfront properties, we're interested in giving the citizens a new and wonderful life, the borders would have been opened immediately. They're closed because Hamas wants to bring in rockets.
And Ben, I'm going to finish up with you. We have a ceasefire now, a temporary ceasefire. We're hoping for a long-term one. Do you see a fading out of these protests and anti-Jewish sentiments across Europe and globally?
No, I don't. I think that, of course, you always need a trigger to have a rise in anti-Semitism, but it's going to keep bubbling slightly above the surface for the conceivable future. I think if you look at the example of France, for example, you have in Paris, the suburb of Sarcelles, you have Jews and Arabs living alongside each other. And I think the tensions that have been caused in that community through the Gaza conflict, the attacks particularly on synagogues and other Jewish institutions, there's every chance that those will continue. There's another reason as well, and I think this is a very important factor to point out, which is that anti-Semitism and this kind of violent anti-Jewish discourse and violent anti-Jewish actions, they're not restricted to the general public and to public opinion. You now have, really for the first time since the Second World War, political leaders, heads of state, involved in agitating against the Jews. The worst offender in this regard is the Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan. Erdogan had the temerity to say that Israel is more barbaric than Hitler, that a conflict in which 2,000 people have died, and a number of those people are obviously Hamas fighters, that is somehow comparable to the extermination of 6 million Jews. That's why I think we've crossed a milestone in this conflict.
And it's unbelievable. This is 2014 and this is where we're at. I thank you both for joining us today.
My pleasure.
See you next time.